So basically, got the front section kind of figured out. Working on the back section right now, and this panel right here is one of them that I couldn't do in the computer because the computer doesn't know how to shape that. So I just ordered it laser cut straight, so it came out here. And so what we did was shrink this top flange and stretch the lower flange. What I did was I also added a flange here and here, so this is all one flange. And then I added some riv nuts to this piece so that those can bolt in. So I went back and forth between whether or not to make this piece just weld into everything or make it still removable. And it's just going to be too difficult to get to put in. Well, it would probably go in as one big chunk, but this whole rear section would have to go in, and I don't want to risk not being able to get something in while it's on the truck because I forgot to think of something. So I'm going to leave it all where it bolts in, and that'll give me some flexibility for final installation after everything's powder coated. But if I can get the front and the back all powder coated and back, then we can install it into the truck and basically set it down on the truck, on the chassis, as one big unit here pretty soon. So looking forward to that.
If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so that you can be notified when we post a new video. All right, we're back. Levi here with Hammerfab. We're getting out the big guns today. We got the old Mjolnir. It means that which smashes. This guy right here is that which smashes. Today we're going to be using it to planish out this TIG weld on our 66 GMC inner fenders. So the black part of this wheel tub is a remanufactured part that we got from Classic Parts of America. So this is the correct wheel tub style for 1959 through 1966 Chevrolet GMC trucks. So as you can see here, we've already cut and sectioned this and shortened it by about 2 inches, and these seams have been metal finished. They're pretty close, but they're not all done yet. So we've got the welds planched out, but we need to do some shrinking and a little bit of fine tuning on those, but we're not going to do that yet. Next, we've added a 4.5 inch wide strip of 16 gauge to the existing 16 gauge, and now we're going to do most of the planishing on this with this bad boy, our power hammer. It's called a Mjolnir. That it means that which smashes. That's like Thor's hammer, you know. Got to be worthy to have Thor's hammer. So anyways, it's basically a resto mod version of a Yoder, which is a Yoder is an antique power hammer from World War II era, and this one basically is a newer, better version of a Yoder. I used to want a Yoder, but now I don't want a Yoder, because this thing is way better. I mean, if you want a Yoder, you really got to just be into the love of the antique machinery, because you're going to pay 40 grand for a Yoder that's completely wore out. You're going to have to restore it. Why do that when you can have a brand new version of a Yoder that works better, is in the 21st century, for half the price? Almost half the price. All right, so let's get to planishing this inner wheel tub. Power hammer is already on, believe it or not. Do you hear anything? Nothing. No rattling clutch, no droning electrical sounds, nothing. Don't believe me? It's on. There's a little fan that kicked on to keep the electronics cool over there. It's all digitally controlled with a VFD drive over there. We got linear bearings here. There's no cone clutch. It's a direct drive electrical motor, all controlled digitally. It's got a digital rheostat in the foot pedal that feels like a clutch pedal. It feels like a hydraulic pedal that would run in a clutch. So guys, I'm telling you, this thing's a beast. It's built for production. It's super smooth, and I totally recommend getting one if that's what you want to get. But anyways, we've got a number 18 radius die in here on the bottom and a flat 0 die on the top. This radius right here is pretty close to a number 18, so that's why we picked that. So we got it's a 0 this way and 18 this way, so that's why we got the 0 on top and the 18 on the bottom. We're just going to smash right on that weld until it's super smooth. This thing should make it where you can't even feel it. Might not even have to grind much. Let's go. You're going to need some hearing protection for this and some gloves. Oh man, that feels so smooth. Can't even hardly feel it up here. It's a little bit of a high spot right there, but we'll just have to shrink some of that out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to feel it. I'm going to circle some of the low spots, and we'll go back over those low spots. That's not really a low spot. That's just the weld is high. Okay, right there's a low spot. That feels really good up there. Man, the rest of there's a little bit. We'll call that a low spot. The rest of it's feeling pretty good. Oh man, we're not gonna have to do much at all. I'm just gonna get those two low spots a little bit, and then I'll kind of just wash over the rest of it. That's better. There we go. All right, now I'm just going to lightly wash over. So what that did was it stretched the weld up, but in doing so, it left a little bit of a, not necessarily a low spot, but a little bit of a dip on both sides of the weld. So what I'm going to do is real lightly just go back and forth over that whole thing and kind of blend it out. we'll call that washing over it. You could even, if you wanted to, you could even put a lower crown die in, which I'm not going to do. Much better. Still kind of low right there. Not anymore. Okay, let's see. That looks good. That looks good. Still a little low right there. All right, now we're ready to do very minimal grinding. All right, now we're ready to start doing some grinding on these welds. I'm just going to start with some 50 grit, and we're just going to real lightly hit it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to try starting with this. This has got 80 grit on it. It's less aggressive. Maybe that'll help us avoid having to grind out too many big sparks. Or not sparks, big scratches. Yeah, that does work pretty good right there. What I decided to do is grab a wet rag, and basically what we're going to do is kind of quench this surface as I go, because I'm basically going to use this kind of like a shrinking disc. So since I'm already putting quite a bit of heat into the panel, I might as well use this as a shrinking disc, and that way I don't have to use a shrinking disc, because the shrinking disc, it works really good, but it tends to leave gouges in the metal that you have to sand out anyway. So since we're already pretty close to our final metal finishing stage here, we might as well just use this as a shrinking disc, and that way we don't create any unnecessary scratches.
Yeah, see that steam come off of there? That's when you know you got it pretty hot. And it's actually doing something. Now that's a big scratch that was already in the panel when I got it. That right there feels perfect. Still a little lumpy up here, so I'm going to hit it again with this. Get a little heat in it. I'm pushing pretty hard when I do that, and that creates more friction. So if you don't get it hot enough, it won't do any kind of shrinking. That's feeling pretty good so far. Still a little bit of a high spot right there, but it's not fully cooled off yet either. The other thing is you got to let it cool all the way before you start shrinking again, because that metal moves quite a bit as it cools. Now we're not really removing much metal. We are removing a little bit, but this is pretty thick metal to start with, so you know, once you get down to a really dull 80 grit like that, it's really not hurting the panel much. It's just creating friction. So the more the abrasive cuts, the less friction it creates. The less it cuts, the more friction it creates. That's feeling pretty good up there. It's still a little weird over here. Alright, that's all feeling pretty good up there. I think I'm going to have to go get a fresh disc to finish this out down here. Yeah, it's just too dull. We're probably going to have to get the shrinking disc involved right there, because that's a pretty high spot, and this method won't shrink that much metal. So let's get the shrinking disc out just for right there. Probably going to have to do the same on the other end. Yeah, right down there by the bottom. Alright, so there again, this is just a friction disc basically. These little serrations rub the metal, they hit the high spots, heat up the high spots, and once they're hot enough, we can quench them with water, and that'll cause them to shrink. So it's just mounted on a really beefy grinder. This is kind of dangerous, but I prefer the one, this is the Sun Chaser disc. I prefer the one without the lip on the edge. I don't like the smooth ones. I like the serrated ones. They work really well. So basically we're going to do a similar thing. We're just going to do these areas right here, create some heat. The metal's going to grow. It'll get higher, but then when we quench it, it'll suck down. you can see it creates significantly more steam than just the abrasive disc. And now that's still really hot, so we're just going to keep rubbing it until it cools all the way down, or most of the way down. It's still a little high up here, so I'm going to hit that a little more. So you can see how it leaves some marks in the metal, but they're not really, it's not really removing metal, it's just kind of marring it. Sometimes those marks, or call them scratches if you want, they're hard to get out. But the main goal here is to make the metal flat, and it's not flat right now, it's got a hump in it. I was pushing pretty hard on that last one. I wanted to create some little blue spots on there where the metal turns blue. And those kind of basically turn into like little pinpoint shrinks. And those are the ones you want to quench. So it's a little bit of a dance with the metal here. You can only do a couple of things. You can shrink it or you can stretch it. And sometimes you got to go back and forth to find out where you're at or to get where you want to be. And where we want to be is flat. And we ain't flat yet, so we got to keep shrinking. Getting better. Now I know I didn't overstretch that area, so probably what's going on there is it was a metal fitment issue. There was probably either too big of a gap somewhere or too much filler rod or something like that, causing it to be a little dissimilar to the rest of it, because the rest of it turned out really nice and flat. So I'm going to try and over shrink it here in a couple spots, and then we'll planish it back, which will stretch it a little bit. I did decide that I'm gonna have these wheel tubs patinaed, so we're gonna have some fake patina put on them to match the rest of the truck. We'll get them powder coated first, so the metalwork has to be really nice because I'm not doing any Bondo on them. So patina will help hide some things, but we still want to get it pretty nice.
Now what I was doing right there is a little bit of cold shrinking. So it was a high spot, and by putting a flat die on the bottom and hitting it with a low crown hammer, basically it's trying to force down the mountain, and eventually the mountain has to collapse. That's the best way I can explain it right now. So that actually got it pretty close.
All right, that's it for today. Tomorrow, we'll add the extension flange on this side, a little bit on both ends, and the return wall on the outside by the bedside. So until then, it's one more step in the metal finishing process. Thanks for watching.